Gino Palazzolo was never just another cast member on 90 Day Fiancé. With his signature hats, quirky charm, and unwavering devotion to Jasmine Pineda, he became a fan favorite. But behind the scenes, Gino was hiding a devastating truth. A long, silent battle with physical illness that no one knew about. While viewers were captivated by the drama of his relationship, Gino was quietly deteriorating. Yes, you heard it right. Gino Palazzolo had been physically ill for a long time, but no one knew about it. During this period of illness, he divorced from his wife, Jasmine Pineda. Jasmine Pineda had secretly developed a deep romantic relationship with Matt. She clearly told Gino Palazzolo, "I will not stay with you. I am carrying Matt's child, and I will only marry Matt." Hearing these words, Gino Palazzolo broke down completely. He could never have imagined such betrayal. On October 28, Gino Palazzolo suddenly fell ill and was rushed to the hospital. After several tests, doctors revealed that he had been diagnosed with brain cancer. His condition worsened rapidly. He lost his memory and could no longer recognize his loved ones. As a last resort, the doctors decided to perform brain surgery. At present, Gino Palazzolo is fighting for his life in a hospital bed. This is not just a story about reality TV. It's a story about love, betrayal, and the fragility of life. It's about a man who gave everything, only to be left broken, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Today, we uncover the untold truth of Gino's illness, Jasmine's shocking confession, and the tragic diagnosis that changed everything. From the outside, Gino Palazzolo seemed like a man living his dream. A quirky, soft-spoken Michigan native with a love for Panama and a heart full of hope. He captured the attention of millions on 90 Day Fiancé. His relationship with Jasmine Pineda was messy, passionate, and unpredictable. The kind of drama that reality TV thrives on. But what the cameras never showed was the quiet war Gino was fighting within his own body. Long before the public saw cracks in his relationship, Gino had begun experiencing strange symptoms. He would often feel dizzy, disoriented, and fatigued. At first, he brushed it off as stress. The pressure of filming, the long-distance relationship, the emotional toll of trying to make things work with Jasmine. But deep down, he knew something wasn't right. Friends noticed subtle changes. Gino, once meticulous and organized, began forgetting things. He'd lose track of conversations, misplace items, and sometimes stare blankly into space during filming. Jasmine, ever fiery and impatient, chalked it up to him being careless or inattentive. But Gino wasn't just distracted, he was scared. Still, he said nothing. He didn't want to worry anyone. He didn't want to derail the show or give Jasmine another reason to doubt him, so he kept his symptoms to himself, masking his pain with awkward smiles and nervous laughter. He'd retreat to the bathroom during shoots, splash cold water on his face, and tell himself to just push through. But the body doesn't lie forever. As the months passed, Gino's condition worsened. He began experiencing severe headaches, sometimes so intense he'd have to lie down in dark rooms for hours. He started wearing his signature hats more often, not just as a fashion choice, but to hide the growing sensitivity on his scalp. He even began avoiding social events, preferring the solitude of his home, where he could collapse without judgment. Behind closed doors, Gino was unraveling. He visited doctors in secret, undergoing tests and scans, but the results were inconclusive. It might be neurological, one doctor said. Could be stress-related, another suggested, but no one had answers. And so, Gino continued to suffer in silence, hoping that whatever it was would pass. But it didn't. And as his health declined, so did his marriage. Jasmine, unaware of the full extent of Gino's illness, grew increasingly distant. Their arguments became more frequent, more vicious. She accused him of being emotionally unavailable, of hiding things from her, not knowing that he was, in fact, hiding the most terrifying truth of all, that he was sick and he didn't know why. In those moments of solitude, Gino would sit on the edge of his bed, staring at the floor, wondering if he was losing his mind. He feared he was becoming a burden. He feared Jasmine would leave. But most of all, he feared the unknown, the shadow growing inside him that no one could name. This was the beginning of Gino's silent descent, a chapter of pain, confusion, and isolation that would set the stage for everything to come. And no one, not even Jasmine, saw it coming. While Gino Palazzolo was silently battling his mysterious illness, the emotional foundation of his marriage to Jasmine Pineda was beginning to crumble. What once felt like a passionate, if chaotic, love story was slowly morphing into a cold, distant partnership, and Gino, already weakened by his health, was too fragile to stop the unraveling. Jasmine had always been fiery, outspoken, intense, and unapologetically demanding. Fans of 90 Day Fiancé saw her as the unpredictable force in their relationship, often clashing with Gino's quiet demeanor. But behind the scenes, her frustration was growing. She felt unheard, unseen, and increasingly disconnected from the man she had once fought so hard to be with. Gino, meanwhile, was withdrawing. His illness made him tired, forgetful, and emotionally unavailable. He couldn't keep up with Jasmine's energy, her expectations, or her emotional needs. And though he tried, sending sweet texts, planning small surprises, Jasmine saw through the effort. She sensed something was wrong, but she didn't know it was medical. To her, it felt like emotional abandonment. Their conversations became shorter, their arguments lasted longer. Jasmine began spending more time alone, going out with friends, and avoiding deep talks. Gino noticed the shift but didn't have the strength to confront it. He feared that if he told her about his health, she'd leave, so he stayed silent, and she drifted further. One night, after a particularly tense dinner, Jasmine looked at Gino and said, "I don't even know who you are anymore." Her voice wasn't angry, it was hollow. Gino wanted to respond, to explain, to beg her to stay. But the words wouldn't come. His head throbbed, his vision blurred. He simply nodded and went to bed. That moment marked a turning point. Jasmine began confiding in others. She started opening up to a man named Matt, someone she had met through mutual friends. At first, it was innocent. They talked about life, frustrations, dreams. But soon, the conversations turned intimate. Matt listened in ways Gino couldn't. He was present, attentive, and emotionally available. And Jasmine, starved for connection, leaned in. Gino sensed something was wrong. He noticed Jasmine smiling at her phone more often, leaving the room to take calls, and dressing up for outings she wouldn't explain. But again, he said nothing. He was too sick, too scared, and too broken to fight for her. In interviews, Jasmine would later say, "I didn't mean to fall for someone else. I just needed someone who saw me." But for Gino, those words would come too late, after the damage was done. The emotional drift between them wasn't sudden. It was slow, painful, and filled with missed chances. Gino's illness had stolen his strength, and Jasmine's loneliness had stolen her loyalty. Together, they had built a relationship that couldn't survive the silence. And as Jasmine grew closer to Matt, Gino was left behind, not just as a husband, but as a man fighting a battle no one could see. As Gino Palazzolo's health quietly deteriorated, Jasmine Pineda was drifting into a world he couldn't see, a world where another man had begun to take his place. That man was Matt. Matt wasn't part of the 90 Day Fiancé universe. He wasn't a celebrity, nor did he seek the spotlight. He was a quiet, confident presence in Jasmine's life, someone she met through mutual friends during a trip to Miami. At first, their connection was casual, a few laughs, shared stories, and harmless texts. But Jasmine, emotionally starved and frustrated by Gino's growing distance, found herself drawn to Matt's calm energy. He listened, he asked questions, he didn't judge. Jasmine began confiding in him about her relationship, her loneliness, and the emotional void she felt at home. Matt never pushed. He simply offered her space to speak, and Jasmine, for the first time in months, felt heard. Their conversations grew longer, deeper, and more frequent. What started as friendship slowly turned into something more. Gino noticed the change. Jasmine was smiling more, but not at him. She was dressing differently, going out more often, and guarding her phone like a secret. He asked once, "Is everything okay?" Jasmine replied with a cold smile, "I'm just figuring things out." That answer haunted him. Behind the scenes, Jasmine and Matt's relationship was intensifying. They began meeting in private, coffee dates, long walks, and eventually, nights together. Jasmine knew it was wrong. She knew Gino was sick, even if he hadn't told her everything. But she felt trapped in a marriage that no longer gave her joy. And Matt, with his quiet strength and emotional availability, felt like an escape. One night, after a heated argument with Gino, Jasmine left the house and didn't return until morning. Gino sat alone in the dark, clutching a photo of them from happier times, wondering where it all went wrong. He didn't know that Jasmine had spent the night with Matt, and that their relationship had crossed a line that could never be uncrossed. In interviews, Jasmine would later say, "I didn't plan to fall in love with Matt. It just happened. I needed someone who made me feel alive." But for Gino, those words would feel like daggers. The betrayal wasn't just romantic, it was spiritual. Gino had given everything to Jasmine. He had fought for her, defended her, and sacrificed his own well-being to keep their marriage afloat. And now, as he battled an invisible illness, she had found comfort in the arms of another man. Matt, for his part, remained silent. He never spoke publicly about the affair, but those close to him say he was deeply in love with Jasmine and willing to build a future with her, no matter the cost. And Jasmine, she was already planning her next move. The affair wasn't just a secret. It was a shift, a quiet, irreversible pivot away from Gino and toward a new life. A life where Gino was no longer part of the picture. And soon, Jasmine would make that brutally clear. It was a quiet Sunday morning when everything changed. Gino Palazzolo sat at the kitchen table, sipping lukewarm coffee, staring blankly at the wall. His body felt heavy, his mind foggy. The headaches had returned, sharper than ever. He hadn't slept well in days. Jasmine walked in, her face unreadable, her movements deliberate. She didn't sit, she didn't smile. She simply stood across from him and said the words that would shatter his world. "I need to tell you something." Gino looked up, his eyes tired but searching. Jasmine took a deep breath, then spoke with a calmness that felt rehearsed. "I will not stay with you. I'm carrying Matt's child, and I will only marry Matt." Silence. The words hung in the air like smoke, thick, choking, impossible to ignore. Gino blinked, unsure if he had heard correctly. His heart pounded, his hands trembled. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Jasmine didn't flinch, she didn't cry. She simply stood there, waiting for a reaction. Gino finally whispered, "What? What are you saying?" "I'm saying it's over," she replied. "I've moved on. I'm pregnant, and I'm going to build a life with Matt." The betrayal was complete. Gino's mind spiraled. He thought of the years they had spent together, the sacrifices, the fights, the moments of joy. He thought of the nights he lay awake, wondering if he was enough. He thought of the pain he had hidden, the illness he had endured alone, all to protect her from worry. And now, she was leaving. Not just leaving, replacing him. He stood up, stumbled slightly, and grabbed the edge of the table for support. Jasmine didn't move to help. She simply watched. "I gave you everything," Gino said, his voice cracking. "I loved you, even when I was falling apart." "I didn't ask you to fall apart," Jasmine replied coldly. "I asked you to be present, and you weren't." The argument escalated. Gino begged for answers. Jasmine gave none. She had made her decision, and she wasn't looking back. The man who had once been her husband was now a stranger, sick, broken, and no longer part of her future. Gino collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. The pain in his skull was unbearable. The emotional devastation was worse. He felt like he was drowning, in betrayal, in confusion, in heartbreak. Jasmine walked out of the room, leaving Gino alone with the echo of her words. Pregnant, Matt, marriage. It was the breaking point. Later that day, Gino would call a friend, sobbing uncontrollably. "She's gone," he said. "She's really gone." The friend tried to console him. But Gino was inconsolable. He was not just heartbroken, he was unraveling. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the collapse of a man who had held on for too long. And as Jasmine moved forward with her new life, Gino was left behind, broken, betrayed, and on the edge of something far more terrifying. Because the worst was still to come. October 28 began like any other day. Quiet, heavy, and filled with the weight of heartbreak. Gino Palazzolo hadn't left his house in days. Since Jasmine's devastating revelation, he had barely eaten, barely slept. His body was failing him, and now, so was his heart. He woke up that morning with a pounding headache, the kind that made his vision blur and his ears ring. He tried to stand, but his legs buckled beneath him. He crawled to the bathroom, splashed water on his face, and stared into the mirror. The man looking back at him was pale, sunken, and barely recognizable. He whispered to himself, "You have to hold on." But his body had other plans. Around noon, Gino collapsed in his living room. No warning, no strength left. He fell hard, hitting his head against the edge of the coffee table. A neighbor, hearing the thud through the wall, rushed over and found him unconscious, barely breathing. Paramedics arrived within minutes. They found Gino unresponsive, his pulse weak, his breathing shallow. He was rushed to the nearest hospital in Michigan, where doctors immediately began running tests, CT scans, MRIs, blood work. Everything pointed to something far more serious than exhaustion or stress. The medical team worked quickly, stabilizing his vitals and preparing him for neurological evaluation. Jasmine was notified, but she didn't come. She was already building a new life with Matt. Gino lay alone in a sterile hospital room, surrounded by machines, wires, and strangers. Doctors reviewed his scans and saw something alarming, a mass in his brain. It wasn't just a lesion or swelling. It was a tumor, and it was growing. The diagnosis came late that night. Brain cancer. The news hit the medical team hard. Gino's symptoms, the memory loss, the headaches, the confusion, all made sense now. He hadn't been falling apart emotionally. He had been physically deteriorating for months, and no one knew. The tumor was aggressive. It had spread to areas that affected memory, cognition, and motor function. Doctors explained that Gino's collapse was likely triggered by a sudden increase in intracranial pressure, a dangerous spike that could have killed him if help hadn't arrived in time. Gino regained consciousness briefly. He opened his eyes, looked around, and whispered, "Where am I?" But he didn't recognize the nurse. He didn't remember the fall. He didn't even know his own name. His memory was slipping fast. The hospital staff contacted his family, who arrived the next morning in shock. They had no idea Gino had been sick. No one did. He had kept it all hidden. The pain, the fear, the symptoms, until his body could no longer carry the weight. October 28 would become the day everything changed. It wasn't just the collapse of a man. It was the collapse of a life built on love, sacrifice, and silence. And now, Gino was fighting for survival in a hospital bed, surrounded by machines, with a diagnosis that would alter everything. The hospital room was quiet, save for the rhythmic beeping of machines. Gino Palazzolo lay motionless, his eyes half open, staring at nothing. Nurses moved gently around him, adjusting IVs and monitoring vitals. But the real storm was unfolding behind closed doors. In the doctor's conference room, where his scans were being reviewed, the results were devastating. Gino had an aggressive brain tumor. The mass was located near the temporal lobe, the part of the brain responsible for memory, emotion, and language. It wasn't just a growth. It was cancer, and it had been developing silently for months, maybe longer. The doctors were stunned. "This explains everything," one neurologist said. "The memory loss, the confusion, the collapse, it's all connected." Gino's condition was classified as grade IV glioblastoma, one of the most lethal forms of brain cancer. It spreads quickly, resists treatment, and often leaves patients with only months to live. The team knew they had to act fast. Every hour mattered. His family was called in for a full briefing. They sat in silence as the lead surgeon explained the situation. "We're looking at a very serious diagnosis," he said. "The tumor is affecting critical areas. He's already showing signs of cognitive decline. Surgery is possible, but it's risky. And even with surgery, the prognosis is grim." Gino's sister broke down in tears. His cousin asked, "How long does he have?" The doctor hesitated. "It's hard to say. Without intervention, maybe weeks. With surgery and treatment, we might buy him time. But it's not curable." The news spread quickly among close friends and former castmates. Some reached out with messages of support. Others were too shocked to respond. The man who had once been a symbol of quirky love and resilience was now fighting for his life and losing. Gino regained consciousness briefly that evening. A nurse leaned in and asked, "Do you know where you are?" He blinked slowly, then whispered, "Home." She shook her head gently. "You're in the hospital, Gino. You've been very sick." He didn't understand. He didn't remember collapsing. He didn't remember Jasmine. He didn't even remember his own name. The tumor had begun to erase him. Doctors explained the diagnosis to Gino the next morning, but he struggled to process it. He asked the same questions repeatedly. "What happened? Why am I here?" His short-term memory was fading fast. The cancer was attacking his brain like a thief in the night, stealing pieces of his identity one moment at a time. The medical team decided to move forward with surgery. It was the only option left, a high-risk procedure that could reduce the tumor's size and potentially restore some function. But the risks were enormous: paralysis, permanent memory loss, even death. Gino signed the consent form with trembling hands. He didn't fully understand what was happening, but he trusted the people around him. He had no choice. Gino, barely lucid, signed the consent form with trembling fingers. He didn't fully understand what was happening. He didn't remember the diagnosis. He didn't remember Jasmine. But somewhere inside, a flicker of survival remained, a quiet instinct to keep fighting. At 7:42 am, the surgery began. Inside the operating room, a team of specialists worked with precision and urgency. The procedure lasted nearly 7 hours. They used advanced imaging to guide their tools, carefully navigating the maze of Gino's brain. Every millimeter mattered. Every decision was life or death. Outside, Gino's family waited in silence. His sister clutched a rosary. His cousin paced the hallway. A few close friends sat in the waiting room, staring at the floor, replaying memories of the man who had once been so full of life. At 2:58 p.m., the surgeon emerged. "We got most of it," he said, "but not all." The tumor had been partially removed, enough to relieve pressure, enough to give Gino a fighting chance. But the cancer was still there, lurking, waiting, growing. The surgery had bought time, not a cure. Gino was moved to the ICU, unconscious but stable. Tubes ran from his arms, monitors tracked his vitals, and a bandage wrapped around his shaved head. The man who had once smiled through awkward interviews and clung to love with quiet desperation now lay motionless, caught between life and death. The next 48 hours were critical. Doctors monitored for swelling, bleeding, and infection. They watched for signs of brain activity, hoping for a flicker of recognition, a movement, or word. Gino's family took shifts at his bedside, whispering encouragement, playing his favorite music, showing him photos. And then, on the second night, something happened. Gino opened his eyes. He didn't speak, he didn't move, but he looked around, slowly, deliberately. His sister leaned in and asked, "Do you know who I am?" Gino blinked. Then, faintly, he nodded. It was a miracle. The surgery hadn't restored everything. His memory was still fractured. His body was still weak, but he was alive. And for the first time in weeks, there was hope. The fight was far from over. Radiation, chemotherapy, and rehabilitation lay ahead. The road would be long, painful, and uncertain. But Gino had survived the first battle. And now, the war for his life had truly begun. While Gino Palazzolo lay in a hospital bed, recovering from brain surgery and fighting to reclaim fragments of his memory, Jasmine Pineda was already living a different reality. One filled with new beginnings, new promises, and a man named Matt. For Jasmine, the decision to leave Gino had not come overnight. It had been building for months, through arguments, emotional distance, and the quiet ache of unmet needs. But once she walked away, she didn't look back. Her heart had already moved on, and Matt had become her anchor. Matt was everything Gino no longer could be. Emotionally present, physically healthy, and ready to build a future. He had stood by Jasmine during her most vulnerable moments. When she confessed her fears, her guilt, and eventually, her pregnancy. He didn't flinch, he embraced it. Together, they began planning a new life. They moved into a small apartment in Tampa, Florida, modest, but filled with light and laughter. Jasmine decorated the nursery with soft blues and yellows, carefully folding baby clothes and placing them in drawers. Matt painted the walls himself, humming quietly as he worked. It was a life Jasmine had once dreamed of having with Gino, but now it belonged to someone else. Publicly, Jasmine remained silent. She didn't post about Gino. She didn't respond to fan speculation, but privately, she was aware of his condition. A mutual friend had told her about the brain cancer, the surgery, the memory loss. Jasmine's reaction was complicated. She cried, not out of regret, but out of grief. Gino had once been her person. They had shared real moments, real love, but that love had withered, and she had chosen to walk away before it consumed them both. Still, the news of his illness hit her like a wave. "I never wanted this for him," she told Matt one night. "I just wanted to be happy." Matt held her hand. "You deserve to be," he said. As the weeks passed, Jasmine focused on her pregnancy. She attended doctor's appointments, read parenting books, and leaned into the quiet joy of impending motherhood. Matt was by her side every step of the way, rubbing her back during morning sickness, building the crib, and whispering to her belly late at night. But even in this new chapter, Gino's shadow lingered. Sometimes, Jasmine would find herself staring at old photos, her and Gino in Panama, laughing on the beach, holding hands in the rain. She'd remember the man who once sent her love letters, who cried when she said yes, who believed in them even when no one else did. And then she'd remember the silence, the distance, the way he stopped looking at her like she was his world, the way he faded, slowly, painfully, until she felt like she was married to a ghost. Matt never asked her to forget Gino. He simply asked her to be present, for him, for their child, for the life they were building. And Jasmine, for the first time in years, felt like she could breathe. She wasn't running anymore. She wasn't fighting. She was starting over. But across the country, in a hospital room filled with machines and memories, Gino Palazzolo was still fighting for his life, for his mind, and for a future that no longer included the woman he once called his forever. After surviving a high-risk brain surgery, Gino Palazzolo was stable, but far from healed. His body was weak, his memory fractured, and his spirit dimmed. The machines kept him alive, but the silence around him was deafening. He was alone. In the days following the operation, Gino's recovery was slow and uncertain. He could open his eyes, respond to basic commands, and occasionally nod when spoken to. But the vibrant personality that once charmed millions on 90 Day Fiancé was gone. What remained was a shell, a man suspended between survival and surrender. His family visited when they could. His sister brought books, though Gino couldn't read them. His cousin played old episodes of the show, hoping to spark recognition, but Gino didn't react. He stared blankly at the screen, as if watching someone else's life. The hospital staff did their best. Nurses spoke to him gently, therapists encouraged movement, and doctors monitored his progress. But even they knew, Gino's recovery wasn't just physical, it was emotional, and emotionally, he was adrift. Jasmine never came. Not once. She knew about the surgery. She knew about the memory loss. But she had made her choice. Her life with Matt was moving forward, and Gino was part of a past she had buried. Friends who once celebrated their love story were now silent. The fan pages that once buzzed with updates had gone quiet. The world had moved on. But Gino hadn't. He was stuck in a liminal space, not fully present, not fully gone. He'd ask questions that made no sense. He'd forget what day it was. He'd stare at photos of people he no longer recognized. And sometimes he'd cry. Not loudly, just soft, silent tears that slipped down his cheeks without warning. One nurse, moved by his loneliness, began writing letters to him. Simple notes filled with encouragement and warmth. "You're strong, Gino," she wrote. "You're still here, and that matters." She'd read them aloud during her shifts, hoping her words would reach whatever part of him was still listening. Occasionally, Gino would smile, but it was fleeting. The isolation wasn't just physical, it was existential. Gino had lost his marriage, his memory, and his place in the world. The man who once fought for love on national television was now fighting to remember who he was. And the world barely noticed. Social media moved on to newer scandals. Reality TV introduced fresh faces. The spotlight that once followed Gino had dimmed, replaced by silence and shadows. He was no longer a headline, just a patient in room 214, recovering from brain cancer, forgotten by the fame that once defined him. But inside that room, something still flickered. A heartbeat, a breath, a will to live. Gino's story wasn't over. Not yet. The road ahead was long, uncertain, and filled with pain. But he was still here, still fighting, still hoping, even if he couldn't remember why. And sometimes, that's enough. Gino Palazzolo's collapse, diagnosis, and surgery had unfolded quietly, away from the cameras and headlines. But silence doesn't last forever, especially in the age of social media. And when the news finally broke, it hit like an earthquake. A former producer from 90 Day Fiancé, moved by Gino's condition, shared a heartfelt post on Instagram. "Greater than Gino is fighting for his life. Brain cancer, memory loss. He's in the hospital and he needs prayers." Within hours, the post went viral. Fans who had followed Gino's journey, from his awkward charm to his roller coaster romance with Jasmine, were stunned. The comment sections flooded with disbelief, heartbreak, and support. "Wait, Gino has brain cancer. This can't be real. I'm crying. He was one of the most genuine people on the show. How did this happen?" Hashtags began trending. "Pray for Gino, Gino strong, 90-day heartbreak." Reddit threads lit up with speculation, updates, and emotional tributes. TikTok creators posted montages of Gino's most memorable moments. His nervous smiles, his quiet devotion, his iconic hats, all set to somber music. But the most powerful reactions came from fans who saw themselves in Gino. He was the guy who loved too hard and got hurt. One user wrote, "And now he's suffering in silence. That's not fair." Others shared personal stories of loved ones battling cancer, of relationships that ended in betrayal, of the pain of watching someone fade. Gino's story had transcended reality TV. It had become a mirror for real-life heartbreak. Some fans turned their attention to Jasmine. Her silence was deafening. She hadn't posted about Gino. She hadn't acknowledged the news. And while many respected her right to move on, others were furious. She left him when he was sick. She's living her best life while he's fighting to survive. Matt and Jasmine should be ashamed. The backlash was intense. Jasmine eventually disabled comments on her posts. Matt remained silent. Their new life, once filled with excitement, was now shadowed by public scrutiny. But amid the anger, there was also compassion. A GoFundMe page was launched to support Gino's medical bills. Within days, it raised thousands. Fans sent letters, flowers, and messages to the hospital. Some even organized candlelight vigils in his honor. The man who had once been mocked for his awkwardness was now embraced for his vulnerability. And Gino, though still recovering, began to feel it. A nurse read him messages from fans. "You're loved, Gino," she said. "People are praying for you." He didn't always understand. His memory was still fractured, but sometimes he'd smile. Sometimes he'd whisper, "Thank you." The internet had done what it rarely does. It united in empathy. Gino's story reminded people that behind every reality star is a real human being. One with pain, hope, and a heart that can break. And while the cameras had stopped rolling, the love hadn't. He was no longer just a character. He was a symbol of resilience, of heartbreak, of the fight to survive. The hospital room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of monitors and the occasional flicker of sunlight through the blinds. Gino Palazzolo lay in bed, his body frail, his mind still recovering from the trauma of surgery and the ravages of brain cancer. But something had changed. He was awake. Not fully. Not the Gino fans remembered. But he was present. He could respond to voices, recognize familiar faces, and even smile at old memories. The doctors called it partial cognitive restoration. His family called it a miracle. Each day brought small victories. Gino could now hold a spoon. He could say his name. He could hum along to songs he used to love. The road ahead was steep, filled with radiation treatments, physical therapy, and emotional healing. But he was walking it, one step at a time. And yet, the question lingered. Would he survive? The cancer hadn't disappeared. The surgery had removed part of the tumor, but the rest remained, hidden, growing, waiting. Doctors were cautious. "We've bought time," they said, "but we don't know how much." Gino's family rallied around him. His sister moved into a nearby apartment to be close. Friends visited with cards, food, and stories. Even some former castmates from 90 Day Fiancé sent messages of support. The man who had once been forgotten was now surrounded by love. But not everyone returned. Jasmine never called. She never visited. She had made her choice, and her life with Matt and their unborn child was moving forward. Gino didn't ask about her. He didn't remember the betrayal. In some ways, that was a blessing. The pain she caused had been erased by the very illness that nearly killed him. And yet, in quiet moments, Gino would stare at her photo, the one the nurse had placed beside his bed weeks ago. He didn't know who she was, but sometimes he'd whisper, "She looks familiar." The final chapter of Gino's story is still unwritten. Will the treatments work? Will his memory return? Will he ever walk again without assistance? Will he find peace in a life that has changed so drastically? No one knows. But what we do know is this. Gino Palazzolo is a fighter. He fought for love. He fought through betrayal. And now he's fighting for life. Not for fame. Not for television. But for himself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the most powerful fight of all. If someone you loved was silently suffering, would you notice? If your partner changed before your eyes, would you ask why? If you were betrayed at your weakest, could you forgive? Gino's story isn't just about illness. It's about the choices we make when life tests us. So now we ask you, would you stay if your partner was sick? Would you fight for someone who forgot your name? Would you choose love or leave for comfort? Let us know in the comments. Share this video if Gino's journey moved you. And remember, behind every reality star is a real human being. This was the story of Gino Palazzolo. And it's not over yet. 90 Day Fiancé. In a new stunt, Jasmine gives ex-Gino divorce notice through a newspaper entry. Matt Brainus finally proposes to Jasmine. Are they getting married? And Jasmine and Matt's hilarious The Addams Family Halloween. Look for baby Matilda's 7-month will leave you laughing. Jasmine demands $916 million from Gino for wife services. Fans think she's not charging enough. I will explain everything. As usual, Jasmine acted in an unusual way. With the help of a public notice in the newspaper, this 90 Day Fiancé star presented Gino Palazzolo with divorce papers. Yes, it is correct. Nobody can really hold it against her, since everyone knows she would never, ever do something inappropriate when no one is there. It doesn't matter if it's a wild night out with Gino or her divorce. She wants everyone to know. This isn't the end, though. Jasmine will be exposed to the world by Gino's attorney, who has also broken his silence. His recent bombshell discoveries have left spectators in utter awe. I don't understand. Just what did he disclose? If you want to know more about this controversy, you should keep reading since it's hot tea. A lawyer for Gino Palazzolo, Thurman Courts, has lately made some disturbing statements regarding the divorce case. It was Palazzolo, the star of 90 Day Fiancé, who actually filed for the divorce in Michigan first, he said. Jasmine allegedly refused to accept service when TMZ contacted the famous attorney who made the accusation. Oh, and that's not all. Furthermore, the cited source said that Jasmine was making every effort to secure a different service for her case. On the other hand, Thomas urged Gino to recoup his investment in her. Palazzolo may have made it apparent that he wanted all of the more than $70,000 that Jasmine allegedly owed him in this case. All that math led him to this. He wants his money back. The 90-day fiancé divorce drama between Jasmine and Gino doesn't need to wait for a new episode. This is due to the fact that Pineda is now also broadcasting all the acts in newspapers. The stated source was correct in stating that the article appeared in the La Gaceta newspaper in Pinellas County, Florida. After her failed attempt at personally serving Gino with the divorce papers, this went downhill. As a result, Jasmine did what she does best. She decided to print it. What was Jasmine's motivation behind this? The information that Jasmine obtained from her source did not indicate that Gino was in Michigan. Nobody is surprised by the present dynamics or by the fact that she is currently residing in Michigan with Matt Branis. But now the important question arises. Could Jasmine be breaking the law if she did this? The LAI holds that this is a legitimate means, helpful in cases where one side is unable to find the other. Jasmine may have adhered to certain standards, though. It is plausible that she would have presented evidence to the court indicating that she endeavored multiple times to find Gino. Had she gotten consent before publishing her divorce in newspapers, it would have been different. In anticipation of Gino Palazzolo's reaction, viewers are already tuning in. Got a second opinion? Feel free to share your thoughts in the section below. 90 Day Fiancé. Matt Branis finally proposes to Jasmine. Are they getting married? Matt Branis, star of 90 Day Fiancé, appears to have taken the plunge and proposed to Jasmine Pineda, his baby mama. On Happily Ever After, he proposed to his beloved. The TLC singer seems to be finally prepared for a lovely life transition after months of anarchy and confusion. An unusual love tale unfolded between Matt and Jasmine. An unexpectedly lovely thing blossomed out of what began as an open partnership. During the current season, the TLC stars welcomed their daughter, Matilda. Not only that, but Jasmine and Matt introduced one other's families. Despite this, the former is legally married to Gino, and she faces deportation to Panama as a result of her suspected visa fraud. Was Jasmine's yes affirmed? Does Jasmine have a husband, or is she single? The introduction of Jasmine to Matt Branis's family has been a source of anxiety for the 90 Day Fiancé star. He talked about how conservative they were and how he was afraid to tell them the truth. Their introduction on Happily Ever After was about to air, and the TLC star was preparing. Jasmine was curious as to the truth behind her partner's statement to his mom regarding her. Therefore, Matt informed her that she is a devout Christian and that they were married in Panama. The fact that Gino is still married to the Panamanian was something he chose not to bring up. It was important to Jasmine to find out how her partner's family felt about them cohabitating and starting a family. Additionally, Matt confessed to informing his mom about his engagement to Jasmine. He was concerned that they may misunderstand and assume they were having a child carefree. Matt Branis, star of 90 Day Fiancé, appears impatient to tie the knot with Jasmine. His mother and sister have already met her through him. But when the Romanian star lied to his followers about being engaged, they were shocked. The audience knows that Matt has his heart set on Jasmine and that he envisions a future with her. They were relieved to hear that he wasn't escaping after they had a child together and were able to deepen their relationship. A new Season 9 teaser was recently revealed by TLC. With each passing day, the tell-all episode is drawing nearer for the fans. That is why the network has been dropping hints about what the final show will feature. In the preview, we saw Matt comforting a distraught Jasmine. He made an elaborate ring-like gesture by wrapping something around her finger. "Mama, would you think about marrying me?" the TLC star inquired. In that instant, Jasmine's expression shifted from astonished to emotional. To this day, her fans still don't know if she accepted the proposal. However, based on her recent comments, it appears that the TLC star has probably consented. The fans are more interested in learning about the wedding plans of Jasmine and Matt. Although the former's relationship with Gino has been tumultuous, he is still married to the latter. She has become a bore for the majority of 90 Day Fiancé watchers. A fan expressed their desire to never see Jasmine again. According to another commenter, the TLC star is stuck with Matt. Have you any thoughts on the matter? Post your thoughts in the space provided. Jasmine and Matt's hilarious The Addams Family Halloween. Look for baby Matilda's 7-month will leave you laughing. Morticia and Gomes are now part of 90 Day Fiancé's world. It appears as though Jasmine Pineda and Matt Brannis have relocated to the Addams family estate due to the unsettling sensations that they are trying to repress. They wanted to add some fun to the Halloween celebrations by dressed as Gomes and Morticia in recognition of their daughter's incredible accomplishment. Not only that, but there's more. Jasmine and Matt's roleplay successfully influenced many individuals. The performers are already laughing wildly since the spectators can't take their eyes off them. So what? I don't understand what's happening. Keep reading to see how Jasmine and Matt revamp their style. The romance between Matt Brannis and Jasmine Pineda was initially looked down upon by viewers of 90 Day Fiancé. There were red flags in their bond that made them think Brannis was seeing Pineda, but the screenplay is now complete. Their friendship is so sweet, and their goals are now motivating people all over the world. When Jasmine decides to shave her head as a means to control her alopecia, the story starts. People weren't expecting Matt to do anything about it, to be honest. After shaving his head, he found himself filming himself. He decided to twin with Jasmine solely to prove to her that her beauty was unrelated to her hairdo. Their newfound friendship has fans going ballistic, and Brannis' encouragement was further explored in part 2. If Morticia and Gomes saw Jasmine and Matt's performance last week, they would be overjoyed. They apparently decided to do something out of the ordinary to celebrate baby Matilda's 7th month. Instead of getting cute family photos, they decided to channel their inner Bluth family. To imitate Morticia's dramatic blink and glance, Jasmine changed into a long, silky black gown. Even though Matt Brannis stole the stage, she still managed to pull off the look with the iconic red lip and rose. With his slicked back hair, mustache, and pinstriped suit, he was completely believable. His charming courtship of Jasmine caused the audience to break into laughter. Even fans didn't know that Matilda and Coco were going to have a cameo. A pink castle backdrop preceded the baby girl's appearance before Jasmine provided her voiceover. She invited her milestone in a voice that revealed her guilt. As soon as they saw Matty dressed as Wednesday, she won their hearts. Many site visitors left heartfelt comments praising Jasmine and Matt's efforts. "This is everything," someone shouted out. "On top of that, I'd planned to compete." "Oh my goodness, I was completely unprepared for that," someone else remarked. Others chimed on with, "OMG, you made me feel very ashamed, my dear." Consequently, the audience had a blast seeing this video. Do you have any ideas? Use the comments section to let us know. Jasmine demands $916 million from Gino for wife services. Fans think she's not charging enough. The 90 Day Fiancé star Jasmine Pineda is attempting to keep her feelings in check following Gino's heartless behavior on HEA. He just asked her for over $70,000 in wife services, and she is suing him to get the money. The TLC star wants to end this whole thing now. In response to Gino's unpleasant statement on the broadcast, Jasmine came up with a brilliant idea. She felt she should get something in return for all the time, energy, and effort she spent living with him. There is zero concern for this reality TV star's deportation to Panama. Gino is demanding that she pay back all of his expenses since she ditched him for Matt. However, Gino's petulant attitude has won thin among his admirers. What is Gino's next move? Jasmine, is this woman serious? Having a family took precedence over a divorce for 90 Day Fiancé star Jasmine Pineda and her husband, Matt. They moved to Florida so she and her baby daddy could have a drama-free existence. but the TLC diver has failed time and time again to overcome her vices. After paying $70,000 for Jasmine, Gino called her and requested the money back. Also, he said he went to the immigration office to file a complaint about her. During their phone conversation, Jasmine confided in Michelle, who had been her sister-in-law before. She sobbed uncontrollably because she was terrified of being deported. Matt went to the office of a lawyer to get some answers. The lawyer told Jasmine that Gino had the legal right to be the child's parent in Florida, claim the baby as his own, and she will be separated from her child. Jasmine Pineda consistently manages to captivate her followers, even when faced with challenging circumstances. Her dread of being deported remains. The TLC star, however, is an expert vengeance taker. In her characteristic sarcastic and hilarious fashion, the TLC diver recently blasted Gino for something. Pineda claimed he was abusing his position as his wife by enumerating her many benefits, a wife services invoice. She called it, detailed a lot of things, including $4 million for picking up after him, organizing his chaotic possessions, and saving his sick plants from the toilet. Jasmine demanded that Gino pay her $1 million to deal with his infidelity, $20,000 to forgive him, and $50,000 to get her fired from her work. Even though his voice was annoying, and she had already decided not to put her children on the K-1 visa, she nevertheless brought up the subject of huge amounts of money. After their interaction, she requested that he pay for therapy for both her and her dog. The star of 90 Day Fiancé wound up with about $916 million after deducting all of the expenses related to her marriage. An astute response to Gino's invoice was made public by a blogger going by the handle 90dayfiance_Alexa. Fans loved Jasmine's wrathful response as she publicly ridiculed her ex-boyfriend for planting a kiss on her face. A cheerleader shouted, "This is awesome. She ought to be asking for more money." Someone else caught Jasmine forgetting to mention how much it costs to lick Gino's wet toes. She should seek a bigger sum of compensation, they say, because her marriage was emotionally abusive. No more today. When are you thinking about this gossip today? Let us know in the comments, and stay tuned by subscribing to our channel to get more updates like this. Thank you.